This idea that that if it's meant to happen, it happens because you're the person that should be the guide for that book. And if you're not feeling that, then you're not the person. And it's cool that it finds somebody else and they find the success for the book, right?
Yeah, and you know, I sometimes have done a workshop at writers' conferences about rejection, which, you know, on the one hand, I'm surprised anyone actually willingly shows up for that session. Like, sure, talk to me for an hour and a half about rejection. But I also think it's really important because we talk a lot in writers' conferences and blogs and podcasts, all of these things about like the things to do in like the hopeful place and in the actively trying place. We don't talk as much as an industry. It's sort of like we were saying earlier about tech and failure, and that they have a different understanding of that phenomenon. Was I having that conversation with you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I think I also had that conversation with someone else earlier today.
Indianapolis is actually a huge tech city. I think we're number 3 in the country right now. My wife works in tech, and so we go to the Mira Awards every year, which is like nerd Oscars, where they go and they give awards to all the startups. And sometimes we see them stand up and give a speech, and they go on to become a great company. And sometimes it's good that they got to get that speech because the company doesn't exist the next year.
Yeah. So anyways, I feel like sometimes we don't talk enough about what to do when you get rejections and what it means and how to move forward from that. And I think it's important for authors and illustrators and people who are out querying their projects to know that it's not personal if you get rejections. Sometimes it's exactly what I was just describing. It's me saying, I can't do right by this. I shouldn't be the one that takes it on. You know, sometimes I don't have the bandwidth to take it on. But that it's not a personal, there's not the emotion in it, I think, from the side of the editor and agent that there is for the author. And of course, it's hard for the author or the illustrator to separate them. You know, this is this thing they created. Of course, there's emotion around it. But I think it's important to know that it's not a rejection of you as a creator. It's literally an agent or an editor saying, I don't have a vision for this. I don't see a place for this. There is a market that exists created by forcers much larger than me, and I don't know how to bend them to make this book work. So I think sometimes this is much an admission of our own limitations as it is a commentary on a writer's strengths or abilities. And I think sometimes writers submit wanting to hear an affirmation that this is where they should be putting their time instead of spending it on another hobby or with their family or with their loved ones, or they want to signal. You know, we all go through school. We're used to having someone tell us if we're doing a good job. And I think sometimes that's what people are looking for when they go on submission. I mean, of course, they're looking for a yes, and they're looking for, you know, here's the road to success. But I think emotionally, sometimes they're looking for affirmation, confirmation. And unfortunately, that's not what the submission process is built for, because it's never our job to say whether or not we think you should be spending your time on this. That's something that can only come from you. It's never our job to tell you if you're talented or not. You know, like those are that's the mechanics of the submission process, which is literally you asking the question, do you see a way to successfully publish this book in the market? And an agent or an editor is saying yes or no. And it's that simple, but I think sometimes people put a lot more meaning into it, or take away rejection on an intrinsic level, as a human, as a creative person, that is not intended by people in publishing. And it's an unfortunate byproduct. I don't know how we change that. But I think it's good just to remember that, like, this is a business letter you're sending. It's a business question. Do you see this product working in the market? And the answer that comes back is a business response.
Sure, but I'm not writing saying, hey, can I sell you 4 o'clock radios. My whole heart's in this thing. Unfortunately, I don't think I've ever been rejected by you. I've certainly received rejections previously. And I remember days when I come home, I'm old enough that we were still doing all the self-addressed stamped envelopes.
Yep.
And I'd get 4 or 5 of them with my handwriting on them in a night. And I come home like, oh, it's going to be a rough night. And you go through them like Charlie opening up the chocolate bars, hoping to find a golden ticket. Like, dear Lord, please. With your rejections, are you using, I assume just by sheer volume, you'd have to use form responses for a lot of them, correct?
Our agency primarily uses form responses. And as with many agencies, there is not the time in the day and there is no one to pay us for giving deeply thoughtful responses. And we might steer you wrong, because if we had the vision for what you needed to do, we'd be having a different conversation. So we do, some agencies are no response means no, and we do try very hard to at least send the response. We have, for anyone who queries us, we have an autoresponder. Right when you send it in, you get a ping back that tells you it was received. This is our current turnaround time. The turnaround time isn't always accurate. We can't always gauge where our focus is going to need to be for our clients, and that comes first. But it lets you know it got there. And similarly, we try hard to get an answer to people eventually.
And so when you do write rejections that are personal, do you include feedback? What should authors be taking away from a rejection that's anything other than dear author, not for us?
Yeah, I think if you can tell that the agent or the editor has really engaged with the story and is trying to understand what your goals are and how they could help you better achieve it, because that's really what the editorial process is. And it's taken me, there are certain things that it's taken me most of my career to be able to articulate. And I think this is one of them, is that the editorial process is really all about, you have a vision of this story in your head, man, but like it's alive in your head. When you're transcribing it onto paper, inevitably there's a gap between the version that's alive in your head and what you get onto the paper. An editor's role is to come and to see what you got onto the paper without having access to the version that's in your head, and to ask you the questions and point out things that help you close the gap even more between the two. So they are ultimately trying to help you better tell the story that you were initially trying to tell all along. They just have a different tool set to do it, and they don't have as much closeness. They have a bit of distance, which can be very valuable. And so that's really part of what the editor's brain or the agent's brain is thinking about, is when they're reading something, is, do I know the right questions to ask to strengthen this, to make it more itself? It's not, and I think this is a fear of a lot of authors or illustrators, particularly ones that haven't gone through a publishing house's editorial process before. It's not an editor saying, well, here's what I'd do with your characters. I'd make them like go to the dance. like, like I'd actually have these two get together instead. It's not an editor trying to write fan fiction in their mind about your story. It's them trying to really comprehend what your goals are and see what they can do to help you get even closer.